tonight's news edition. The king says he will release a series of discussion papers outlining his vision on the kingdom's comprehensive reform process. Egypt's main opposition group says it has not changed its position towards the new constitution and calls on Egyptians to demonstrate against it on January 25th. And Russia hosts Syria's peace envoy Lakhdar Brahimi this week as part of a diplomatic drive to end the 21-month-old conflict. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. As Jordan moves closer to parliamentary elections, His Majesty the King will release a series of discussion papers outlining his vision on the kingdom's comprehensive reform process. The first paper is to appear soon, focusing on His Majesty's vision on the nation's course towards democratization. The papers seek to facilitate national dialogue and encourage citizens' participation in decision-making. His Majesty the King bid new Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe good wishes after he won confidence in Parliament and became Japan's 7th Prime Minister in 6 years. In a cable to Abe, King Abdullah wrote that Jordan looked forward to expanding ties to achieve a common interest of the two friendly countries in various fields and cementing relations with the Northeast Asian nation. The Independent Elections Board of Commissioners rejected yesterday name lists that include slogans promoting sectarian or ethnic division in violation of public order or undermine the national unity. After reviewing candidate lists, the board accepted all applications except for one due to its name. Egypt's main opposition group said it had not changed its position towards the new constitution and called on Egyptians to demonstrate against it on January 25th, the second anniversary of Egypt's revolution. Opposition spokesman Hussein Abdel Ghani said that the opposition would stick to its policy of peaceful protest against President Morsi's government. The president admitted that Egypt's economy faces serious problems after he enacted a new contested constitution that is supposed to help end political unrest and allows him to focus on the financial crisis. He also added that it was time for all political forces to put aside their differences and start working together to bring economic stability. Egypt's public prosecutor has ordered that ousted President Hosni Mubarak be moved to an army hospital from his prison clinic due to a recent medical report. Security sources said it is unclear when Mubarak would be moved, but news agencies added that his condition would be monitored at the Maadi Military Hospital before moving him back to his prison clinic. Mubarak, who was sentenced to life in prison, was admitted to the hospital in late February of last year. Egypt's prime minister may replace as many as 8 ministers next week as part of President Mohamed Morsi's plan to reshuffle the government ahead of a parliamentary election early next year. The reshuffle is likely to affect service ministries and possibly one ministry with an economic portfolio. The service ministries that may be reshuffled include those of communication, transport, local development, electricity, petroleum supplies, and internal trade. The international envoy to Syria, Lakhdar Brahimi, is due in Moscow on Saturday. He is also expected to have a third joint meeting with U.S. and Russian officials soon, following 2 rounds of talks earlier this month. But he denied the existence of a U.S.-Russian solution to end the crisis and said it was too soon to present a complete plan. Lay Shanqiti has more on the diplomatic efforts in the following report.
Russia will host Syria's peace envoy Lakhdar Brahimi this week after Syrian officials held talks in Moscow as part of a diplomatic drive to try to agree on a plan to end the 21-month-old conflict. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov told a senior Syrian diplomat that the crisis in Syria must be resolved through dialogue rather than force. Syrian Deputy Foreign Minister Faisal Miqdad and an aide held talks at Russia's foreign ministry for less than 2 hours. Foreign Ministry spokesman Alexander Lakishev played down the idea that a specific plan was on the table in Moscow, at least none agreed by Moscow and Washington.
Мне очень просто сказать, что такого
It's
плана.
very easy for me to tell you that there has not been and is no such plan. Therefore, it can't be discussed. In our talks with Mr. Ibrahimi and with our American colleagues, we are trying to feel a way out of the situation on the basis of our common plan of action that was agreed in Geneva on June the 30th.
В июне текущего года.
Talks have moved to Moscow, a long-time Syrian ally, after a flurry of meetings Brahimi held at Damascus this week, but the international envoy has disclosed little about the negotiations. Brahimi, who saw Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and held a series of meetings with Syrian officials and dissidents, is trying to broker a peaceful transfer of power. Speaking in Damascus to reporters after a 5-day visit, he said the solution to the Syrian crisis must be reached by bringing the Syrians' points of view together. Brahimi added, if Syrians were unable to come to a consensus and understanding, the international community must help them.
The solution is by bringing Syrians' points of view closer, and if the Syrians were unable to do that by themselves, the international community, their neighbors, and all people must help them for the good, not evil. And I think, but we are sure that the Geneva conference that was held in June last year has enough elements to put a plan that could end this crisis within the few next months. Violence must stop. And for the violence to stop, there should be strong monitoring that could be provided by peacekeeping process.
Little seems to have changed since Brahimi's own ceasefire efforts in October failed after 4 days. Brahimi's new plan for an end to the Syrian crisis focuses on a transitional government but has left vague Assad's role. The opposition rejects anything but Assad's overthrow and says the government crackdown has been too fierce to accept dialogue. Late Shankiti for the news at 10.
On the ground in Syria, rebel fighters resumed attacks against the military base of Wadi Daif next to Syria's main north-south highway, which links Aleppo to Damascus. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said government Air Force jets launched 3 raids on rebel forces around the area, igniting fierce clashes. And Hama activists reported that rebels shot down a MiG jet near the town of Mork in their attempt to extend their control southwards towards the capital. U.S. President Barack Obama left Hawaii for Washington, cutting short his Christmas holiday vacation. His sudden departure came after signs of a way through a deadlock in Congress. Republican House of Representatives Speaker John Boehner urged the Democratic-controlled Senate to act by pulling back from the cliff and offered to at least consider any bill the upper chamber produced. Obama will try to revive budget crisis talks after they stalled last week when he returns to Washington. Heavy snow and high winds have caused traffic chaos in the northern part of the United States, bringing traffic jams to many states. Many interstate highways were closed and vehicles collided with each other. The heavy snow also delayed many flights. At Indiana International Airport, 90 of the 145 flights planned for the day were eventually canceled. In addition to traffic chaos, power supplies to more than 1,500 households in Indiana was cut off due to the heavy snow. In Ohio, the snow forced the Cleveland Hopkins International Airport to cancel over 100 flights. About 20,000 plastic spheres carrying residents' wishes floated down the Singapore River as the city-state gets ready for the New Year's Eve countdown. Participants wrote what they were grateful for and what they hoped for in 2013 on the wishing spheres provided at various stations across the country. Organizers said the event, which started 5 years ago, aims to connect people from all walks of life through a collective expression of their hopes for the year ahead. The wishing spheres will be lit up in different colors on New Year's Eve and will be part of an 8-minute firework display. Britain's world number 3 Andy Murray lost 6-3, 6-4 to Janko Tipsarevic at the Mubaddal World Tennis Championships in Abu Dhabi. The US Open champion made a faltering start to the new season, making numerous errors at the hands of Serbian world number 9 Tipsarevic. Tipsarevic will go on to face Spain's Nico Almagro, a late replacement for the ill Rafael Nadal in the semi-finals. The day's other match saw Spain's David Ferrer beat Thomas Berdych of the Czech Republic 6-2, 6-4 to set up a semi-final meeting with world number 1 Novak Djokovic of Serbia. Ferrer was never troubled by Berdych after making a blistering start, which saw the world number 5 win the first 5 games of the match on his way to taking the first set. The second set was closer. Ferrer broke Berdych's serve in the 6th game, then held his own service game to win the match. The semi-final matches will take place tomorrow, with the final and consolation matches taking place on Saturday.
Game, set, match, Ferrer. 6-2.
Legendary Brazilian soccer player Ronaldinho arrived at Pune Airport in India today to publicize the making of a new animated film, Ronaldinho vs. Aliens. He was welcomed by a group of traditional drummers and mobbed by fans as he left the airport terminal. The 32-year-old will be featured in the animated film inspired by Space Jam, which starred basketball legend Michael Jordan. However, details of the project have not been announced yet. The former Barcelona and AC Milan striker was instrumental in helping Brazil win the 2002 World Cup and was voted FIFA's World Player of the Year in 2005-2006. Finally, a look at the weather. Cold tonight with light easterly winds. A slight rise in temperature is expected tomorrow. Therefore, it will be cold in the hilly areas and relatively warm in other parts of the kingdom with moderate winds. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a relatively cold night and a pleasant day tomorrow with moderate winds and calm seas. The weatherman warns against frost formation tonight and in the early morning hours. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. In the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. The king says he will release a series of discussion papers outlining his vision on the kingdom's comprehensive reform process. Egypt's main opposition group says it has not changed its position towards the new constitution and calls on Egyptians to demonstrate against it on January 25th. And Russia hosts Syria's peace envoy Lakhdar Ibrahimi this week as part of a diplomatic drive to end the 21-month-old conflict. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.